Welcome to the TE Spotlight, where we shine a light on the next and new authors, artists, comedians, choreographers, actors, directors, musicians, internet personalities, up-and-comer or well-established, people you need to know and people you need to know more about. This is the TE Spotlight. Today we're speaking with author S.T. Holmes, who's written a couple of books, Creole Moon, Book of Roots, and Creole Moon, The Betrayal. A little bit about S.T. Holmes. She was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. She was educated in the Catholic school system there. She is a twin, and she has one younger sister as well. We're going to get to know a little bit more about her. I'm not going to tell you her entire story. It'll take the fun out of her telling you her story. So let's welcome S.T. Holmes to the spotlight. How are you doing today, S.T.?
I am super, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing super as well. So let's jump right in. Let's talk a little bit about how these books, Creole Moon, Book of Roots, and Creole Moon, The Betrayal, came to be.
Okay. You know, this is so weird for me because I've always been a writer ever since high school. And I was riding on, we call it River Road. I don't know what other people would call it, but New Orleans, River Road. My mother and I were heading home, and it was during the fall. The moon was gorgeous, and so I couldn't take my eyes off of it. It just mesmerized me. And I told my mother, I said, wow, wouldn't this be a neat story? Something about riding River Road, the Creole from New Orleans, and just a regular book. And she looked at me like, okay. She thought I was weird. Okay. So I first called the book Voodoo Moon because, my mom says I'm weird. But I first called the book Voodoo Moon, and I thought about love and loss. And I'm unfortunately have been married and divorced, never really found another true forever love. And I kept thinking, maybe there's something wrong with this. So I took that Voodoo Moon idea and my love and loss idea and said, something else is causing people to lose the love of their life. And that's how I came up with this story. Here's my hero. Here's this young woman that he falls in love with, but he doesn't fall in love with her by choice. He falls in love with her under a spell. And then the story starts to weave around what happens when you fall in love. Some people fall in love and stay married forever. My mom and dad were married for 50 years, and they knew each other for 70. And then other people fall in love for what seems to be a brief moment. There's happiness, but then it ends. And so that's how the book developed. And my character, whom I love to death, George Genois, is how we pronounce his name, George Francis Genois. Mm-hmm. And he falls in love under a spell, but then crazy things happen. I call it fate, where there's love and then there's loss. Mm. And then Book of Roots takes on a different story, still with love and loss, but still under spells, still with the Greeks and gods, but a little twist to that story as well. I don't want to give away the plot.
No, I don't want you to give away the plot either, because I'm just, it sounds so delicious. Like I just want to go and digest this today. But I do have to ask you one question. All right, here's the important question, and I think our listeners want to know this as well. What is this spell that they use to put him under? Because I could cast some love spells all over New York City. I can make some money off this spell. Like, what is the name of this spell? Where can I find this spell?
You know what was the funniest thing? Remember this song a long time ago called Love Potion Number 9?
You know I do. I'm a man of a certain age. Yes, indeed. Love Potion Number 9. Yes, that was the song.
That is it. That popped into my head, and I kept thinking, oh, yeah, I can use this.
This is brilliant.
Instead of calling it a love potion, I called it a spell. And the spell that is put on him, it deals with, and again, it's with, he and she. He's trying to woo this woman to love him.
Right.
But she, just to give you a little bit about the story, she is an activist, really out of her time period. She's a woman that's actually trying to be a civil activist. And so her interest is not in marriage, neither is George's. But for some reason, the spell put on him is making him fall in love with her. And so the spell says that it will only be broken once she comes to him of her own free will. Mm-hmm. So it's not just he loves her. She has to love him enough to give up her own personal aspirations. And if she doesn't, he will never have the spell broken. So the book goes on with him trying to figure out how to break this spell.
ST, I have so many questions right now. I have so many questions. I really have to sit down with this work now, because I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, so I'm seeing like sort of the similarities between Beauty and the Beast, right? But in reverse. But then I'm also saying, was this put on as a curse? Was this not a curse on him, but actually a curse on her? And she, someone is trying to stop her from advancing the cause of civil rights. Like, it's so many questions here. And you're laughing because you know what you've done right now. You know what you've done.
I do. And this is to make you read the book to find out what happened.
I gotta know what's going on. Was it like some KKK individual trying to shut a sister down? What is going on right now? I need to know, where did the spell come from?
This one lady said it was like crack. She said she opened the book and started reading it, and it was like crack. She couldn't put it down. She stayed up all night and read the book in one whole day. I fell out laughing. I said, well, that's wonderful. It didn't take me a day to write it, but I'm glad it took her a day to read it.
Isn't that the greatest compliment you can get as a writer? Someone saying to you that they pick up your book and you can't put it down. How does that make you feel when you hear people saying that?
It's so, I get elated. I get so pumped up with energy. I have to go run around or do something crazy to burn off that energy, the excitement, and it's just there. And every time I hear that, and I will just tell you, both these books have earned 5 stars on the Reader's Favorite website. So I've had it reviewed by 5 different people. Beautiful. And each one has given them 5 stars. So when I sit here thinking, I've earned 5 stars, I must be doing something right. And it isn't just that, it's love. A lot of people are fascinated with love stories, but this is a twisted love story. So it's not just the romance novels, it's a bizarre romance novel.
What's really pulling me into this? I'm sorry. What's really pulling me into this is the intellect behind it, right? So there's you can write a book and you could write it straight ahead, and it's almost like insert person here, person kisses person here, tragedy happens here, person finds, like, it's just, we've seen that so many times before. I can honestly say that you're talking about something that has familiarity, but it's leaving me with more questions than answers. I'm not going into this saying, oh, I know what this is about. Like, and you know this, where people use the phrase, you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, some books you can judge by the cover. This does not seem like one of those books. So I'm really excited to know more about this book and sit down and read it. But tell me, how did you come up with Sergeant George Francis Genois? How did you come up with this?
Genois?
Yes.
Kind of funny. I went to, there was a young man, when I was in elementary school, his mother named him Francis. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, Francis took a ribbing, and because everyone thought, well, Francis is a girl's name. But I thought that was just a very unique name for a man. Mm-hmm. And George was just a name that I thought of. I said, well, I know a lot of Georges. Genois is just a street in New Orleans, and I love the name Genois. So I said, well, why don't I come up with, it's just that bizarre. I know people named George. I like it. Francis is a young man from my very elementary school days. His name was Francis. I love that name, and I put them together. George, Francis, and then the street in New Orleans, Genoa. The same thing with one of the hero or the heroine in the book, Joella. Joella is named after one of the towns in Louisiana. Driving through, my names, the characters just come from locales, street names that I look at and find interesting, and then I said, oh, well, let me figure out how to weave that in a book. So every situation that I encounter, I look at it and try to figure out, is there something that I can spin as a character? Is there something that I can spin a story around? So everything that I encounter can potentially become a story.
How did you...
So be careful.
I've been put on notice. Let me tell you something. If I read Creole Moon, New York City, and I see Tomas was doing his podcast, but then there came a shadow moon.
There you go.
Don't you do it. No, do it. It sounds great. So what's your writing process when you sit down to develop these books? What goes through your head? How do you come up with that?
Well, like I said, I was driving down the road. It was late at night. The moon was up. And my mind said, oh, nice. Sorry. I was driving down the street in Texas. It was really a country road. And I looked at, and it was dark. So these little lumps of hills and things look kind of bizarre. So I'm weaving another story around these bizarre hills, these little lumps in the property. Mm-hmm. That and that story isn't out yet, so I don't really want to do a whole lot on that. Right. So I get inspired from just about anything that I see. I have another book that I'm working on. I work on a number of books at a time. So there's another one that deals with the Vestal virgins from, early biblical days. And so I look at things that are around me. I've always been a type of history buff. And so I'm looking at things that went on during the Greek and Roman Empire days, dealing with Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. That's how I'm weaving those into this book. So it's things that I have experienced, sometimes just, like I said, driving along the street, right. And all of a sudden this idea pops into my head. And I have a recorder that I will just click it on and say, oh, write a story about, or if I'm thinking about the book and I've come up with a unique way of saying it, I press my recorder and say, here's another way to say whatever it is that I'm working on the current book. And so it's just not any one particular process. Right. And if it requires research, and I do a lot of research on things, I want to make sure that I get some of my historical aspects correct. So, for instance, in Book of Ruth, it's dealing with the Mardi Gras season. I wanted to find out when was Mardi Gras during the 1920s, what other festival happened 100 or 200 years ago. This is how I came up with the Lupercal Festival, and I've got those woven together to make it old and new. Again, it's from my bizarre, twisted mind, I guess.
No, I love it because you're doing your research, right? So you're giving education with the fiction, and sometimes people just, they take literary license and all of it is fiction and they sort of create a new world. But you're doing this fact-based fiction. And I always find that interesting because there's the educational component, but it also makes it intellectually stimulating because you're able to transport yourself back to that place. And even though they're fictional characters, these are real life events that they're living. So that's an art. Not everyone can do that well. So do you find challenges in doing that? Is it challenging or do you find that easy?
It is challenging. So, for instance, in Book of Ruth, I have the characters in the city of New Orleans, but then what was going on from a political standpoint during that time period? Well, I did some research and discovered that prohibition was going on. So then I said, wow, okay, well, not just prohibition, but other things. So I said, let me weave some of the prohibition aspect into the book that would give you another element of history but it's woven into a fictional